Hey friends, this is the last video of Iceland that I'm going to make unless I go there again. So here's my trip in 30 seconds a day and me just kind of talking about the obstacles that I hit along the way. There were a lot of things happening even before I got on the plane. I had originally planned it to go on my own the first week and then with 3 other people the second week, but due to unforeseen circumstances that fell through. So I had no one to split the bill with that second week, which would have been great as Iceland is a fairly expensive destination. I had saved a good bit of money because with a full-time job, the rest of the year is spent saving for upcoming trips. I was just fully aware the entire time that I shouldn't eat out for every meal, especially since I was already planning on doing one of the most expensive things just a few days in, the scuba dive, dry suit training, and dive between tectonic plates. Some of the other items that were expensive that I spent money on, aside from all of food combined, were accommodations and the car rental. Also, car rentals. They had stick shift car rentals for much cheaper than the automatic cars. I'd like to thank my dad for teaching me how to drive a manual transmission, but it had been a few years and I felt rusty. So a week before takeoff, I asked my friend Brent if he'd let me drive his stick shift car around the block a few times. It came back to me so fast, it was like riding a bike. And on the trip, I only stalled twice with no witnesses. Speaking of driving, the only times where I really felt unsafe in Iceland had to do with nature. My economy-sized car rental was pretty low to the ground. So some of the trailheads that I was trying to get to, I had to drive 5 or 10 miles an hour, very slowly. I was basically off-roading in this tiny little car that probably could get pushed over by the wind. Icelandic wind, which, if you haven't heard, is extremely strong. You're advised to park into the wind, so when you open the doors, they don't fly off the hinges. At least in some parts of Iceland. The wind on the cliff tops was also very strong. And you know what's also no joke? Sneaker waves. If you haven't heard of these, they're waves that sneak up on you. They look like they're harmless, but actually they can carry people away forever. There was one that snuck up to my ankles, but I managed to pull myself away. So yeah, grant nature a little respect. But not in any town that I visited, or the only city that's in Iceland, Reykjavik, did I feel unsafe. It's a beautiful country. I have traveled on my own before, but I hadn't done it in the middle of a pandemic. That being said, I was still planning on staying in the most budget-friendly accommodations possible, which ended up being hostels. I'm accustomed to traveling in hostels, but a few things have changed since the last time I was in one. That's right, you guessed it. My age. I mean, also the pandemic. Did you think that I was gonna say that first? I'm just aware of how old I am in hostels that I've known to be stereotypically a younger person accommodation. However, I think this is mostly an opinion that's mostly in my head and I'm still working on moving past it. Reykjavik is easy to get to from the airport and is the only actual city in Iceland, so I could see why the hostel in Reykjavik was fairly full. There were a few concerns, especially when one of the people started coughing as I was trying to sleep. Coughing during a pandemic. Every cough seemed louder and worse than the next. However, no one was required to wear masks throughout my trip, and that might be because even before boarding the plane in Austin to New York, I had to confirm that I filled out this Iceland pre-registration form, and then the last stop before the double doors that led outside the Icelandic airport, there was a checkpoint where I had to, again, confirm that I had filled out the form, had the vaccine, and also tested negative. So maybe the cough wasn't anything to worry about in the hostels. I would like to blame the pandemic on other things like my not talking to many people at all, but I can't really. I'm pretty awkward, quiet, and uncomfortable in social situations. When hanging out in groups, I like to keep that group to only 2 or 3 of us. When it comes to meeting new people, I'll let them make the first move and then I'm like, oh, okay. This person has time. We might have things in common. They want to be friends. Maybe best friends. Like I said, I'm kind of weird. I don't often feel lonely on solo trips. I keep myself incredibly busy, and because of that, it often isn't a restful holiday. But I do feel like there's nothing else that I could have squeezed in, so I don't feel bad when I have to say goodbye to a country that I don't know if I'm going to visit again. It wasn't just accommodations that had to be planned, but everything. Originally, the planning was going to be split up in our group of 4, and only a week before the flight, the group thing fell through. So I scrambled to get my accommodations and tours booked and plan out all of the hiking trails. I don't usually like to wait that long to do research anyway. I prefer to start a few months out. But back in 2020, I had a ticket booked to Norway for May, and I was planning on doing a half marathon there. And a few months out, well, I guess you know the rest. I was so unmotivated to do any research because every day was a constant, am I going, am I not going, so I didn't plan. That's kind of like what happened here too, until I decided that I was going even if the other 3 people weren't able to. Towards the end of the trip, I kept freaking out that I was going over budget, which didn't help my anxiety, but after all was said and done, I shouldn't have let that affect me so much. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm not saying that I should have gone on a spending frenzy, but just not be so concerned about it. I'm not sure if I'll ever get to go back to Iceland, however much I'd like to. Now that I told you all about my trip, if you're planning a trip to Iceland and something that I shared interested you, check out my itinerary linked in the description. If you have any follow-up questions, comment below and I'll do my best to answer. And thanks for watching. Make sure to smash the like button, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Bye! Okay, I gotta be honest, this kind of seems like a sketch place.